Hello, hello, and welcome to today's episode with Amrit Sandhu. Amrit is an international speaker, podcast host, and founder of the Inspired Evolution. Certified by Eckhart Tolle's School of Awakening, he is also Mindvalley's Master Certified Trainer for Australia and India. Amrit delivers keynotes, talks, seminars, and workshops from the Inspired Evolution and Mindvalley in the United States, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Amrit's love for helping people stems from his own struggles with depression, which triggered his own personal awakening journey. He shares the tools of meditation and personal development, which helped him profoundly on his journey towards wholeness. From working as a civil engineer to speaking to the masses, Amrit found his purpose in a life of service through helping people evolve to the best version of themselves. He now helps others find their purpose and fulfillment through transformation and inspired action. Welcome to the show, Amrit.
Oh, brother, it is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Love being here.
The honor is mine. And one of the parts in your bio immediately just jumped out to me when I was reading it, which is just to dive right into the deep end here, is, you talk about how your struggles with depression triggered your own awakening and your journey. So can you give us a snapshot into your life around that time of what the depression was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to give you the raw, honest truth of it, I was self-medicating a lot, probably, with marijuana, smoking a lot. I remember there was a clear moment where I realized I was just I couldn't get out of bed to post a letter. I had one task that day, which was just to mail a letter. And I woke up, sat in bed, chilled, looked at the letter, stayed in bed, just could not get out of bed for the life of me, just could not get out of the bed. And that was like 9 a.m. that I woke up and got around to 5, 6 o'clock, and the letter was still sitting there. And that was my one task for the day, and I couldn't even do it. At that point, I knew something was up, like something was wrong with my system, because a letter is something that, if you look at if you look at my day-to-day lifestyle now, my calendar would probably overwhelm most people, touch wood. But yeah, letters is something you just get, you just drop it in as you're doing all your other tasks. But yeah, the depression was thick, it was dense. That was probably one of the moments where it was most present to me that something was up. And then the kind of brunt of it, the real crush of me realizing that what I actually had was depression was I was basically in university at that time, and I was meant to be studying and attending my classes. In fact, what I did was I had a retail job, I had an engineering job as an urban planner, I had a job as a bartender. So I had 3 jobs.
Wow.
And I was meant to be going to uni. And in fact, what I was doing was, as a young man, I was earning, the way I was looking at the time, like fat stacks. I was making mad amount of coin, and I've had the privilege of, I think it's 58 countries now that I've visited. And I would just save my money, travel, earn money, travel, earn money, travel. But this thing called university, which was everybody around me in my ecosystem, and I kept fronting like I was doing well at uni, and because I could always rest on my laurels. Like, I graduated high school like really, really well. I've always been academically pretty sound, so that when it came to university, it was an independent learning environment, and no one was there looking over my shoulder. So I was just kind of like set to the wind and just doing my own thing. And it got to the point where the university finally turned around and said, "Dude, you're not even rocking up to your exams. Like, we're kicking you out." And I was just like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're kicking you out. Like, you're done here." And in that moment, instead of turning around to everybody in my ecosystem, my friends, my family, been like, "Hey, by the way, like, I've just been like lying to most of you for the last 3 years, 6 years, whatever." Instead of coming face to face with that fact, I basically spun a lie to everybody and just continued to dig the trench of dishonesty. And that was the crux.
Like when you say like what were you telling people?
Yeah, so literally I turned around to people and I said, "Hey, like I didn't get kicked out of university for non-attendance." I said I got kicked out of university because at the time I said to my family that there was this speculation that I was cheating on something. Right? For me, somehow that was the lesser of the two evils. Yeah.
Gotcha.
which was a complete fabrication. Yeah. And at some point, a family member of mine called the university, and the university was in the wrong to do this. But again, notice like there is no right or wrong. There just is. They let that person know that contacted the university, this family member of mine, that actually he didn't get kicked out for cheating. He got kicked out for, poor grades. And the university is not meant to disclose any of anyone's private information to anybody, right? So technically they did the wrong thing. But it's a blessing, right? Because that person, when I contacted them and said, you disclosed, at the time I was freaking out. I was like, you told my family member that, right? And then they were like, yeah, but I thought it would be better for them to know that actually you've just been struggling to keep up with your grades than for them to think that you're someone that is cheating, And it was interesting to watch that person's moral code and conduct and realizing that, there's something like, there's something wrong here, like not like from going from someone that was literally like, I got the top award for sciences and maths in my school when I graduated high school in year 12. And then all of a sudden, like getting kicked out of university is like a bit of there's something going on there. So when my family members found out, they confronted me. And then it all started to fall apart, and I had nowhere to turn, nowhere to hide. There was a lot of tears. And I basically ended up in a psychologist's office because I had nowhere else to sort of turn to. And when I ended up in front of the psychologist, in her infinite wisdom, turned around to me and said, you know what? You're going to be all right. And I remember looking at her and I was just like, what? Like I've just shared like all this stuff, like I've given you the abridged version of it. And she's like, yeah, you're going to be fine. And I was like, how can you just say that, And some part of me was pissed off because it was like, you've just literally just told me that, the depression seems like it's been there for 5 to 6 years through. And right now, you're telling me that I'm fine. In a couple of months, I think you'll be on a really good track again. And her response was that actually it's mostly got to do with the fact that you're aware. And this is something that I've subsequently learned through my coaching and learnings from Eckhart Tolle. Is the way Eckhart Tolle puts it is the awareness is the shift, right? And that's a big thing that I'm consistently coaching my clients these days, which is once you're aware, the shift has already happened, right? And this is what she was alluding to in the moment. You're aware something's wrong because your whole world's come crumbling down around you, right? Like everything is gone to, in need of a better way of putting it, to shit. So you're aware that something needs to shift, something needs to change. Most people, and this is what she was telling me at the time, was most people that are in her chair, they can't come face to face with the fact that something's wrong. Yeah. So in its infinite wisdom, the universe, the way that it had landed, even the university disclosing my information when it shouldn't have, was a blessing in disguise for me. At the time, I felt so wronged, so victimed, so wrongly done by. I can't even begin to put it in words for you. But in that moment, she diagnosed me, and then the thing that she said right after was, "You're going to be okay. You need to embrace honesty." And that was this, it was this moment where literally the rug from underneath my feet came out, because that thread that she pulled on, that word honesty, was literally everything. It just started like, that was what just like, and like the whole thing started to just unravel from there. And I was like, fuck, she saw right through me, and I didn't realize so much at the time, but subsequently having done plenty of work on it, and then, being a coach, I'm intimately aware with what happened in my process. What basically happened was I grew up always fronting, always putting my best foot forward, right? I don't want to blame anybody. There's definitely no blame in me around this, but I just grew up in a culture that is Eastern, like an Indian culture. And in our culture, there's so many people in that country, population, pollution, corruption. Like it's a really corrupt country as well. This facade of keeping up appearances. Like you have people that don't necessarily live in the nicest places, but they drive 7 Series BMWs, right? Because it's when they go to meet people, when they interface with people, they want to have an image that they put forward. And I don't think it's a reflection on my parents. Like they're lovely people, but like little things is where it would creep in. Like my mum would always be 5 minutes away And I was like, I can hear you. You're in the shower. You're not even like dressed or in the car. Like you're still going to be another 35, 45 minutes, you know? But it was just these little things that you don't realize are cultural sort of mindsets. Cultural values is actually what they are, right? So in there, I didn't realize that I grew up with a certain set of values in a society that was operating with different set of values. I thought everybody was just putting their best foot forward all the time. And the real self, the authentic self, was just a couple of steps behind it, about to integrate into that. That was kind of my understanding of the whole world. And I thought everybody was doing that. But then when my whole world came crashing down around me, I realized, no, they're not. Actually, in the Western culture, most, like, just be honest. Like, even if you're like today, like I was, you know, I hit you up and I was like, hey, like I'm going to be late to our podcast, right? And I was like, I let you know in advance that I was going to be 15 minutes late, right? The old Amrit would have just swept it under the rug, rocked up late, and just been like, oh, when I was crossing the road, something happened. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this is like 10 years ago now, like it's ages old. But that was kind of the journey that I've gone through. So that was me realizing that the values of the society that I'm living in are incongruent with the values of the values that I was raised with. And that's where there's this discrepancy, because I'm fronting all the time and people are expecting that to be my truth and they're holding me accountable to that truth. And I can't live up to the fronting truth of who I am because I'm fronting, right? And so in there, it was like, you need to become really honest with yourself. And that was the exercise that the psychologist ran me through. Now, at the time, I didn't have all of this jargon around it, but it was literally, she was like, embrace honesty. And we went through this exercise of me embracing honesty. At the time, the exercise was really bullshit as well, if I'm honest with you. But I also had this deep desire to change. So I realized that the exercise was only going to be as lasting of an impact as much of I brought myself to the exercise was how much of an impact it would have on me. And I was so desperate to change that I gave it my everything and made a commitment to basically be honest. And the last little bit of that story is, you know, from there, so that was my first realization of values, you know, and even in that moment, I didn't really unpack it to be values until I started growing into personal development. But that was my realization around honesty. And the cool thing was, I started realizing I could rewrite my operating system, right? Like there was software inside that was like, oh, there's like, you know, the dishonesty piece, that is like a virus, dude. Like that just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs and creates more and more and more problems. And you've just been running it and covering up lies with more lies. And you can't, like, that's just getting out of hand. And it's gotten to the the hardware store to get it fucking sorted out. So as of that point, it was like, all right, cool. Like I need to antivirus remove that. I need to install honesty. We need to like a whole new operating system, a whole new software. So from there, the second piece that happened was she gave me pills. She gave me these antidepressants, and I went to see the doctor has a relationship with a psychologist. So she gave me the pills. I went to fulfill the prescription. Just before I did, I had to check in with my doctor just to have a conversation around what the psychologist had said. So I'm sitting with the doctor, and the doctor's like, did she give you pills? And I was like, yes. And she's like, cool. Glad you got the pills. By the way, I know you're going traveling and you're doing all these things. Check out this breathing exercise. I want you to write this down. And I was like, breathing exercise? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, and I couldn't believe it. I was just like, breathing. Like, is this really where you're going with me? Like breathing, man. I'm what, like 20
now?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like I've been breathing my whole life. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't breathing. You're telling me to breathe. And she's like, look, before we had a psychologist, you know, I used to do a lot of the mental health work. This stuff actually works, but there's more and more science coming up around it. Just write this down. And I literally just wrote down a 5-step breathing program, which was like counting your breath, really. It's breathe in, 1, breathe out, 2, breathe in, 3, breathe out, 4, breathe in, 5, breathe out, 4, breathe in, 3, breathe out, 2, breathe in, 1, breathe out, 2. And I would just go in that cycle, just going 1 to 5. She had me going to 10, but 5 worked better for me subsequently as I kept working with this. And I wrote it down and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, you know. And I got home and like on the way home, fulfilled the prescription and took my first pill. It was amazing. It was amazing, bro. So I took my first pill and I was bouncing off the walls. It was like It was incredible. It was like I cleaned shit that I hadn't cleaned in years. I was sorting out like my room. I was just getting so much done. I was just like, this is epic, right? Like I feel really good. I had house music on at the time. I was really bounced around. I was feeling really, really good. And then about 3.5 hours later, I crashed.
Mm.
And it wasn't even like I just I just basically came down off whatever the pill was. But it was such a stark place that it literally felt like I took drugs.
Wow. Well,
Right. And so I
technically
was
you did.
right.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so from that place, I didn't know much about myself. But as you'll notice, the logo, the Inspired Evolution, is the mind. I've always been really like conscious of my mind, my mindset, and just, and from there, I was just like, I looked at the box of pills as my only lifeline, as what it was at the time. I remember looking at it and just looking at it with such caution. I remember going over to the kitchen and just putting them in the bin and just going, this isn't the answer. And I knew I was stuffed because all I had was the pills and this diagnosis and this commitment to being honest. That's literally all I had. Um, and I knew the pills helped because I felt so good and I got so much done. But it was as soon as I came down, I was like, I'm not going to be this guy that's spending his life going doosh, 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 up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. That wasn't like, it just was not part of my prayer even back then. So it was, and as a young man, like that's quite a frightening place to be. Yeah, it's like you've just realized you've got depression. And, for me, it was kind of nice to hear that I had depression. For those tuning in, like some people say labels don't serve you. That label really served me. It really helped because all of a sudden it was like, oh, fuck, this is that thing that they're talking about 1 in 2 people have in their lifetime. And it's okay to have it. Like I've got it. Oh, shit. Okay. Like I now get it, like it was actually like it let some pressure off just realizing that's what I had. And then from there, like the challenge that I had was knowing that I had it, but then didn't have of like anything to support me through it.
Other
So
than the pills that they gave you.
Right. And so lo and behold, one of the things, as you can imagine, I would have had to do because I had to clear out of uni was go clear out my locker. So I went back to uni for the last time to go clear out my locker, and I'm there. And depression and anxiety are very closely linked. If you don't mind, I'll just do some sharing here really quickly. Having been a mindfulness meditation teacher now, they're closely linked and they treat them very similar. And this is why mindfulness helps so much, because basically if you spend a lot of time thinking about the past, your thoughts are depressing. Yeah. And if you spend a lot of time thinking about the future, your thoughts are provoking anxiety in your system. Right. So, I should have done this, or I could have done that, or I could have done this better. Or did I do that? Or did I? Can you feel how like it's like it's sort of those thoughts have that frequency of sort of pulling you down? Or I could, or maybe I should, or maybe I could have actually, or have I? Oh, that's interesting. Maybe tomorrow, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could do that. I wonder if Jake is gonna ask some good questions. And can you see how like that's speeding me up, and that's kind of like creating this like it's speeding things up. That's the frequency of anxiety, right? So looking forward, projecting into the future, brings in anxiety. Looking into the past brings in depression, right? Now, there's nothing to demonize about looking backwards and looking forwards. It's how we got here, right? If we hadn't learned from our mistakes as a species, we would not be as rampant 7.6 billion on the planet as we are. Yeah. And if we hadn't learned to plan for the future, we wouldn't have a planet where we could accommodate 7.6 billion people. And you can argue how well that's going. #inspired evolution. But you know what I mean? Like there's, it's still our ability to plan got us here, like webcams, microphones, me talking to Jake from the other side of the planet. Right. But the challenge becomes when we don't anchor ourselves in the present moment and we spend more time in the future locked into our anxiety, or more time in the past locked into our depression and depressing thoughts. So if you can just come back to the present moment, because in the present moment you will find, even to those tuning in, obviously this is a little bit biased because you're listening to me, so I'm making it sound like it's amazing because you're listening to me, but you've got headphones, you've got a device, you've got the ability to tune into amazing conversations all over the world. I have the amazing blessing right now to be in a beautiful home, beautiful running water, gardens, beautiful environment. I get to speak to an awesome human on the other side of the planet that's literally, I recently met, is like a complete brother to me. It's just the present moment is always so freaking rich. Yeah, it's always amazing, right? But as soon as you sort of breathe into it, you come, you're grounded, there's no problems. There's really, very rarely is there problems. If there is, then you're in fight or flight mode. Yeah. Otherwise, you just chilled. Yeah. And then your mind will go, oh, and then I wonder what you're going to do tomorrow. And boom, you're back into an anxious thought, which is cool. Like it's fine to go there, but come back home here. Make this your home, not this your home. And then just hear from fleeting moments, right? So that's the challenge there. So sort of come back in on that tangent and that teaching. I'm walking down the corridor and I'm unpacking my locker and the walls are closing in. And I can literally feel it like, what the, I feel out of place because this was the place that I've been lying about to everybody. And I'm back in the corridors. I don't want to bump into anybody before they see me. And they're like, oh, what are you doing clearing out your locker and all that shit? Like all my stuff's coming up. And I literally feel the walls closing in. And now I can identify that as anxiety, right? At the time, it was like, what? And so I had no idea what it was. I just felt this constriction. And one of the things I didn't realize, and one of my favorite books on depression, guys, is Lost Connections. If you want to read a book, oh man, Lost Connections. It talks about how depression, anxiety, it's all about connections to self, connection to nature. It's all about connection. And my highest value is connection. And again, our values come from our biggest challenges. My biggest challenge was depression, right? So connection. And I didn't realize I did this thing. I pulled out my phone from my pocket to call someone. And I used to be this guy that it was the age of no social media. I used to spend an hour on the phone to my friends. I'm not sure if people can relate, but I used to literally just pick up the phone, speak to a friend for an hour just while I was doing shit. Like I would have my headphones in, talking, and just shooting the shit. And then I'd hang up with one friend, call another one. We'd just be on the phone together, just chilling, just talking about whatever. And by some grace of God, I had put the breathing exercise in a clear cover in the back part of my phone that I had at the time. And I pulled out my phone and I was backwards and I looked at the breathing exercise and I was going to call someone because I was looking to connect, right? To get away from this situation, to connect into another situation. It was a lost connection. So in there, I'm looking at the back of my phone and the breathing exercise and I'm like, all right, let's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I shit you not, in that moment, my whole life changed. The walls physically fucking moved out. Like they literally just moved out. And the whole corridor was just so broad again. And there was just so much space in me. And I was just like, what the fuck just happened? Like it was legitimately like, wow. Now I can tell you like the counting of your breath is the only thing that's happening in the most real time in your body, right? So it's bringing you directly into the present moment. The mind is always looking for things to do when it's untrained, right? So giving it something to count literally gives it something to focus on, and it's focusing on the most real time thing that your body has. So it's like, boom, anchored into the present. So all the anxious and depressive thoughts can just sort of settle because you come back into the present moment. And that was, and I didn't even know it was mindfulness then until about a year and a half later. But that was my introduction to mindfulness. And that's where mindfulness completely healed and changed my life.
Wow.
So that's the story of the depression and where it started to heal.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there's so many things I could say. One thing that did come up for me is like, I personally haven't had, I mean, I've told many lies in my life, but it was really interesting for you to share that because it immediately gave me compassion for people I know who kind of have a tendency to lie, of like, like the way you explained that was the values of where you grew up. It gave me such compassion for people who do this, because it's not like they're consciously, maybe to some degree, but it's been an ingrained value, and through your journey you realize that and with the help of that psychologist you got the awareness about that, which I think
so the value system, the tradition where I picked it up from has it in there. Also, like I had a direct experience of me using it as using lying as a tool and it getting me out of trouble, and then me using it as in the future again, because it's like, oh, this works, right? We're just creatures of habit, right? So obviously my forefathers have been doing it for ages, right? So that's handed down patterns, but then also we have the direct experience. So it may not be that people may just pick it up like they're in a really tight corner and then they don't know how to get out of it, and they start a lie, and then from there it's like, oh shit, like that worked. So the next time that they're stuck, they lie again. It's not all rosy, by the way, because When I had to give up lying, my memory is now shot. I used to have to remember all the things I had to tell everybody. And now I live out of my calendar, and my notes in my phone is so heavily abused to that app. Like I don't remember shit because it's just the truth now. It's just like, it is what it is. This is what it is, like, you know? So it's not all rosy giving up lying, just so you know, your memory goes to shit.
Yeah. I love that. And I have a question for you that I think it will especially carry weight coming from you with your experiences with mindfulness meditation, learning from Eckhart Tolle, and all of your experiences, which is, you said something to the effect, and you can correct me, awareness is transformation. What was the direct
Awareness
line?
is the shift.
Awareness is the shift.
Yep.
Which I agree with. And especially if I find that I'm really good at, like, when a friend or someone's talking to me, I'll be like, look, you're aware of it. That's like half the game. And I'm also, like, telling you right now, I'm aware of some stuff about me that are like blocks, right? So that maybe it's not fully in the subconscious, but I haven't exactly noticed myself shifting because I'm like not exactly sure what to do. Can you elaborate onto that topic?
Absolutely.
Of, like, what does that
Can I
mean?
share? Yeah. So I love storytelling is like the most ancient art form, the way to sort of learn. Is it all right if I just share a story that is?
Dive in, bro. The way you talk, man, I could hear you listen. Like, by the way, your accent and just the way you articulate experiences is brilliant. So dive in.
Thank you for your blessings, bro. So, yeah, the story that I like to use around the awareness is the shift. When I share it to an audience live, is I used to be a litter bug. Again, this is like the listen to all the shit bits about Amrit, but all good. So I used to be a litter bug. Old Amrit. Way back when. Yeah. still evolving, always inspired, always evolving. But yeah, I used to just literally eat something and throw my wrapper on the earth. I'm not proud of it, right? Definitely not proud of it. That was just, you know, in my defense, if I had to provide a defense, the engineer in me literally used to think there were street sweepers and cleaners, and there was like meshes in the drains that would collect all the rubbish and discard of it properly. Like, that's just what I thought. And my wife, like now wife, back then girlfriend, she would point the finger at me, right? And she'd be like, dude, you got to stop that. Like, that is a filthy, disgusting behavior. Like, that is just not cool. Like that, just stop, just no. And I was just like, and I just drop it and walk on, like really arrogant, really just, toxic, right? And it got to a point where one day she turned around and she said this one thing, which changed everything, which was, you know, that goes to the ocean, right? She'd been harping on about rubbish and me and littering for like 18 months since we'd been together. But she said something different this time. What she said was, you know, that goes to the ocean, right? And I was like, no, it doesn't. She's like, are you serious? You're like an urban planner / structural engineer. Like, yes, it goes to the ocean. I'm like, nah, street sweepers and cleaners and stuff. And she goes, Amrit, stop kidding yourself. It goes to the ocean. And in that moment, I saw the YouTube video that 90% of the people that are, sorry, I got goosebumps to talk about. 90% of the people that are listening here have tuned into. You've seen that video of the straw coming out of the turtle's nose, and the straw is just as long as the turtle. Have you seen that? Like they're pulling out with a set of pliers?
I've seen a variety, maybe not that specific one, but so many similar situations.
Video, yeah. So I saw that. Yeah, right. And so I saw that, and in that moment, I was like, I had that image flash into my head. That YouTube video literally played in my head, and I saw, and it was like, fuck, that's my straw. And I was like, shit, that's me. That's me. Like, when I remember watching that video, I was like, dude, that's messed up. Who would do that? But I never paired that to my littering. And the minute she said, you know, that ends up in the ocean, I was just like, oh, like, that's me. Right? So the awareness dropped in that, like, holy shit, I've been a fuckwit. Sorry, pardon me for my French, but that's literally where it's at, right? And it was like, it dropped in, holy shit, I've been a fuckwit. Like, that's been me. Now, from that point, I would love to stand here and tell you, as of that point, as of that moment in time, line in the sand, I never lit it again. I'd love to tell you, the minute I walked out of the psychologist's office, I was never dishonest again. But that's not my truth. It's not my truth, right? It was a process. It's a total process from that point. So the next time I was walking along the street, I had my rubbish in my hand. Yeah, I literally threw it on the earth, kept walking. Second time, I was walking with rubbish in my hand. I was walking on the street. I had this massive vision in my head, and I had this deep realization, all the guilt associated with it, all the emotions, all the feelings. Second time, still just trashed my rubbish, kept walking. Like a fuckwit, still a fuckwit. Dropped my rubbish. Third time, kept walking. It was actually about the fourth time where I had the rubbish in my hand. I dropped it and I paused for a sec. It was like a moment. It was like, remember the turtle, bro? And I was like, oh, yeah. And I kept walking. And the fifth time again, I dropped it, but I paused for a sec. And I was like, remember the turtle, bro? I was like, yeah. And I kept walking. And the sixth time again, I dropped it. I paused maybe a little bit longer. And I was like, the turtle. And I was like, yeah. And I kept walking. It was probably about time 7 where I dropped it, thought about the turtle, kept walking. And then I went, nah, dude, the turtle. And then I went back, picked up my rubbish and put it in the bin, right? Now, the 8th time was the same as the 7th. I was walking, threw the rubbish on the ground, stopped, walked for a little bit, stopped again, walked back, picked up my rubbish, put it in the bin. 9th time was the same. Threw my rubbish on the ground, walked past it for a while, and then I went and I maybe even walked a little bit further. And then I was like, nah, shit, man, I got to go back and pick that up. That's going to the ocean. So I walked back, picked it up, put it in the bin. Now, it was about time 10 that I literally went to go drop it on the ground. I was like, dude, I'm over this looking like a dickhead thing. Like, you walk down the street, then you walk back up the street and pick up your rubbish, and then you put it in the bin. Like, it's idiotic what you're doing. Okay, where's the bin? And I started looking for the bin, and I was like, okay, there's one up there. All right, I'll go put it in the bin. Time 10, put it in the bin. Time 11, it was like, all right, cool, I've got rubbish. And I went to throw it on the ground. I was like, okay, I'll put it in the bin. Where's the bin? All right, there's the bin. It was about time 12 where finally, without thinking about it, my first thought was, where's the bin? And I threw it straight in the bin. Now, obviously, you've got an enlightened community tuning into your podcast, bro. So I think people can, and we've pre-framed it with the awareness as a shift. But when I ask the audience, generally, it's like, at what point did I shift? People are like, when you're throwing your rubbish in the bin, right? You can see the behavior change. The pattern has now changed. That's the reform that we were looking for, and we got it. And the truth is, no. I changed literally the moment I saw the straw coming out of the turtle's nose. Yeah. The rest of the game, the rest of life, was me integrating the shift into my tangible reality, my psychology, my mindset, whichever dimension you want to call it, spirit, emotion, intellectual. Intellectually, I'd had the awareness, I'd had the shift. The shift was there. The rest is what we call integration. The rest is me playing catch up with now the shift of awareness that's created within me integrating that into my life. Now, certain times it'll take 6 months. Certain times it'll take 6 days. Certain times it can take 6 years to integrate a shift. Yeah. Now, it's all about how much grace you can afford yourself on the journey. One of the worst things you can do, and I see this a lot as a life coach, is be fucking hard on yourself. Yeah.
Okay. First, that was so brilliantly articulated. And just to interject, because I actually heard you tell that story more or less on I think it was another podcast. The way you told it this way, it just landed differently for me. Here's my question for you. And I love what you were just saying about being hard on yourself, because I'm guilty as fuck as that person.
As I'm pointing one finger at you, bro, I got 3 pointing right back at me. So don't stress.
Yeah, but I think what I'm saying here is I have a decent level of self-awareness where, like I was sharing, like, for me, it's a story I have around dating and relationships as the example. But like, and in terms of what's the balance between A, being hard on yourself, but B, trying to make that change faster? For example, let's say I don't want to wait 6 years to integrate, or if I'm conscious of behavior that's not like, is there anything that you've become aware of that can help someone close the gap, if you will, from where they are to where they want to be, shorten the integration period, essentially?
Yeah. So it's bringing more awareness to your process, but not more judgment to your process.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
so if you can just, go on. That's cool.
Yeah. So by awareness, essentially just the observation in my body of how I'm feeling and the thought process I have around whatever the thing is that I'm trying to shift.
And also whatever, like your other, and triggers is a pretty masculine word, so I don't like to use it too much, but whatever the other triggers are as well. It may be that a certain relationship and partner or a certain behavior that is exhibited by the opposite sex puts you in a certain place, right? And now if you're open to it and you're aware of it, that this happens all the time, play is a really powerful word. It's like, oh, well, I always go into this mode. Let me just try emphasize how it goes if I just behave a little bit differently. Right? So you can play a little bit differently, but you don't have to go, fuck, I always go into this mode. I got to do something fucking differently. And there's like filled with judgment and you're just backing and berating yourself and you're just treating yourself like shit. That part, that's not, a 5-year-old doesn't change like that. You're not going to change like that. You need your own love, to sort of bring you into a newer version of yourself. And so from there, it's like, okay, cool. I'm not going to judge myself and I'm going to be aware of how I normally operate. But I'm also aware that potentially how I normally operate hasn't really yielded the results that I normally want. And so how would this look like if it was easy? How would this look like if it was fun? How can I play in this space, right? And it's not easy because it takes some daring, it takes some courage to be a different person than who you are, right? It sounds easy as, oh yeah, just play and have fun. And actually, no, it's not. These are things like you're vaulted up and bolted up for a reason. You've got real fears around how you will be received with the opposite sex potentially. But it's like, well, I'm just gonna play and see where this takes me, And so that's where the awareness is really important. Now, there's going to be points again where your awareness slips, and it's like, I did that unconsciously again this time. Of course you did. You're in the process of integration. Every now and then you will litter again. Right? But it's okay. Don't be hard on yourself. You're just a human doing the best you can. Is it fucked up for the planet? Yes. Right? But you're just trying to do the best you can. Right? And there's plenty pulling you down. This is where it takes like a warrior's attitude to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
Totally. I love that story that you shared because, yes, do we all love that story of you see one thing and you've just forever changed from that instant? Absolutely. It sounds sexy. We love that story. And it's not the case all the time. Like I've had that moment where like literally in a second I shift. But I think more often than not, it's exactly what you said. I had that first awareness and it takes time. So thank you and it landed so well hearing it the second time just tonight. So I want to dive into something that I've heard you talk about, which I've had to learn firsthand, but I want you to give an explanation to this. You talk about how your health is your purpose and your purpose is your health. Can you elaborate?
Absolutely. I could elaborate for the rest of my life and I'd still be elaborating. That is the message of my heart. It's pretty much, that is the heart of the Inspired Evolution and what's driving me to do everything. So just to give people an idea in terms of what's going on is I actually fundamentally see myself as a health coach. Always been in and out of the gym, always looking after my nutrition, hydration, like, Chinese herbalism, tonic herbalism, Ayurveda, always looking at all these things and just trying to stay on the edge of the slipperiness that is health, not fitness, health. Yeah. Fitness is someone else's idea of what you should fit into. And that is not fitness. That's not health, right? That's fitness. That's a mold and fuck the molds. You're unique. You're a thumbprint completely. So just health, what it means. It just so happens that because of the past with depression, consistently being in like a gym junkie for like 10 years, I've worked on so many elements of my health, right? That the central piece for me, and it's not like this for everybody, but what I have had to learn, the central piece for me that I believe in was when I wasn't in the right headspace, right? Everything else went to shit, right? Everything else went to shit, right? And there's podcast episodes in the Inspired Evolution now. Recently, we did one, The Body Keeps the Score. So if you're holding on to traumas, like even the way I used to work out was just like heavy weights, no stretching, no mobility. I was abusing the shit out of my body, right? And like that was what was right for me at the time. It was an abuse. Yeah. So I was trying to fit. This is where I was trying to fit into this image of what I thought was healthy for me, but it wasn't, right? So to fast forward the journey from like, okay, I went through my journey of depression and then I actually had to shift states, move to a whole nother state in Australia, study really hard, went back to university, left go off all my jobs and just focus on getting the qualifications that I wanted. And then I got the qualifications of the engineering degree that I needed. And then when I graduated, and again, this is not to sound egotistical, but when I won this award, there was a full process around it, and they asked me, why should we give you this award as opposed to everybody else in the entire university? And I said, if you give me this award, it would have mean that my journey of my healing of depression would have been inspiring for me, and I'll use it to inspire others. So I offer that back in that same energy, just to honor where that came from. When I graduated university, I graduated top of not just engineering, not just my form of engineering, not just engineering, but the top of the entire university cohort that year. Medical students, engineering students, legal students, everybody. Which just goes to show, like, I got kicked out of one university and then I like duxed another university. So like your mental health plays such a massive part in how you navigate the world. Yeah, like when you're compromised, you're fucked. You can't even post a letter. And when you're on your game, yeah, you're clocking universities. Yeah, like that discrepancy is one person. That's me. Like, and that's the story. And that's kind of, so when I graduated, I then got the pick of the litter of wherever I wanted to work. I could work anywhere, right, here in Melbourne. So I chose the best job. And the day I got to my job, I remember looking at the CEO and going, that dude's not honest. First of all, those shooting into this episode, he wasn't honest, right? And there were so many values. I don't want to berate him, but there were so many values that were just out of alignment of who I had to become to be this version of me, which I knew was the right trajectory for me. But somehow I carried this image, and I still do, of we're going to be the change we see in the world. Like, we're going to do that, right? Like, we're going to change the world that we're in, right? There's this activist in me, I guess. And I just felt that was going to be the same thing in the organization. And I stayed with the organization, even though the very first day I knew I was out of alignment. This corporate ladder went to there, and that is not where I want to be. But I stuck at it, for years and years and years and years and years, 7 years. Yeah. And then it got to a point where eventually I was just like, this is crushing my soul. Like, this is actually, I got to the point where, for those that, maybe your audience is similar to mine, you've probably seen the Matrix, the second Matrix, where Neo goes back to the machine city. He's unplugged. He goes back to the machine city, and he sees the clouds covered, and the humans actually covered the clouds so that the machines wouldn't get solar power. And then in their wisdom, the machines decided that, okay, if we can't get solar power, what's a solar generator? Human beings. And they started harvesting babies, and that's where they plugged everybody into the Matrix. So they felt like they were living, but actually they're in this machine city. They're battery cells for the machines. And you see them in those little red pods, and humans are being grown, as Morpheus says. And you literally just felt like a cell, a part of the machine. Just the machine is just harvesting you for your energy. That's what it felt like for me working in corporate construction, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days of the week. That's not including the days where we had pushes and had overtimes. I'd be coming home at 10, 11 o'clock sometimes, Monday through to Saturday. Sunday was just recover, right? And this wasn't a message I was always carrying this message of health is purpose. So imagine knowing that my health is my purpose is my health, and being subject to that. Yeah, it was intense, man. It was an intense lifestyle. And for a while there, I thought, you know what? I'm going to make it work. Like, we will be the change that we're going to see in the world. Like, I legitimately thought that was going to come through. And it didn't, and it wouldn't, right? And it just so happened that I'm going to go all the way on this conversation, if that's okay. So this one, my wife went away overseas, right? And it's similar. Like, when you're in a loving relationship, you go through similar frequencies at similar times. So she had a bit of an existential crisis. She's a dentist, and she was like, you know what? There's got to be more to life than filling holes in people's teeth. Like, it just has to be, right? Like, wake up, fill holes in people's teeth, I'm home, and it's interesting. I think dentists are known to have a really high suicide rate. Touch wood. And I think the reason that is because they get paid so well for their services that actually they can take 2 months off and not have to come back to the office. So they're not actually plugged into the rat race, as they're not as interwoven into the rat race as everybody else is. Engineers, lawyers, you get enough to sort of make sure that you come back in next month. Yeah. That's legitimately how much you get paid, right? So you're on the hamster wheel, because if you think about getting off, then it's like, whoa, how do I pay the mortgage next month? How do I do this next month? How do I do this? It's like, whew, get back into it, right? But with a dentist, it's like, I could work. They could work for a month, and then 3 months just kick back, right? And they can see over the hamster wheel. But when they look over it, it's like, whoa, shit, it's pretty fucking hollow, right? That's where I believe the suicide rate is high. I may be wrong. That's just my perspective on it. So she goes traveling and she goes, I'm going to go find myself. Meanwhile, everyone's like, are you going to let your girlfriend just travel the world? And I was like, what do you mean let? First of all, you're in a completely different paradigm to what we are. We're completely equal in this relationship. She got to go find herself. She's got to go find herself, right? And secondly, like if I, which I do, I love her. If she's feeling empty in a relationship, like empty, not just in her relationship, but like in life, wouldn't I want her to be whole? Because most of my friends couldn't wrap their head around the fact that I would let her, is the language they said. And I say that with like air apostrophes, let her, because there's no me letting any her or anything. She's her own person. But people were like, you'd let her travel the world for 12 months? And I was like, dude, if she needs to go fill up her cup, even from the most selfish position that I see it from, I want her to be as full as possible. So I've got a full partner. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean let her? Anyway, so she went traveling and she had this existential crisis and she went traveling around the world to find herself. And she found music, which is such a blessing, right? She now plays the guitar. It's amazing. Like, anyway, it's a blessing. So she, on her journey, found music. And at that same time, that was the first year. Every year we used to go to Europe together midway through the year. And that was the first year I decided I wasn't going to go overseas. I was just going to lock down the fort, stay at home, hold it down, and just do my thing. So I stayed home. And the reason I'm going all the way with this is because there is actually cycles in nature, natural cycles that we're embedded into, right? So summer, imagine the sun, is all about expansion. I'm such a sun bear, bro. Like, summer is about expansion and just being out open. And imagine the sun's rays, right? They spread and they just reach further and further and further. And autumn is almost like if you imagine the sun, and you see a sun with a triangle, like instead of being a globe, like a circle, like orb, the triangle, it sort of pops out, like the leaves from the trees start to fall. You start to the sun starts to contract a little bit because it loses some of the triangles out of its shape, and you can see the sun as that is shaped like a star. And in winter, so autumn's all about shedding. So summer's all about expansion. Autumn's all about shedding. Winter's all about contraction. So the sun comes in even more. It's still like orbular, like the summer sun, but it's so tight and small. Now, winter is quite contracting, but it can be very purifying. When you can, a way of purifying things, you don't have to put really hot water. You can also freeze things and thaw out the impurities, right? So it was really purifying. And then spring is all about, opening up again and learning to expand. Like it's like setting new seeds and opening up. And then summer expansion again. It's this breath that the earth is taking, that we're on, that we're taking with it. Yeah. Now I share that with you because this was the first time that I stuck through a Melbourne winter. Every year we cashed in on 2 summers. We do Melbourne summer, it'd get to autumn and we'd be like, peace out, Melbourne winter, fuck the cold. And we'd go to Europe and just party and come back. Right. And this was the first year that she was away and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to stay home. And I stayed home and it was the hardest winter that I've been through. Like it was the first full winter I'd been through and I'd stayed in the cycle. It's almost like I'd done all this expanding and came close to contracting, but then expanded again and then and then expanded. And I never got the purification that was required from contracting. Now, it did not feel comfortable in my system for a second, right? To the point where literally that winter, like there was no wife around. It was literally just me in my home, like living as a bachelor. It was a really beautiful time though, because never have you, and many people, been in a 6-year relationship and all of a sudden become intimate with their own energy again, right? My wife used to say things like, you're the messy one. And I was like, no, I'm not. We're both messy. And then she went away and I was like, fuck, I am the messy one. It's like, it is me. But I was also realized like, I'm the guy with joy, touch wood. Like I'm the one that brings like the laughter. I'm the one that keeps people connected, and she's really good at like caring for people. And so it was a really beautiful time for me. In there, that winter was what birthed the Inspired Evolution, because I was feeling so compressed and so stuck and so just, oh man, it's dark. I'm leaving at 5 a.m. I'm coming home at 7 p.m. It's dark when I leave. It's dark when I come back. I'm just building towers. What the fuck is going on with my life? And it was just like, I don't know, and I was literally ready to quit to go work in another country somewhere, some other career, whatever. And by some grace of God, my friends were all like, hey man, you've got to do a podcast. And a mentor appeared and he was like, look, I want to set you up with a podcast, Brian Rose of London Real. And there was just this conversation around, like, I realized at some point, I woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning and realized I was this resistance piece. If I just got out of my own way and just, gave Brian Rose thousands of dollars, I could just build a podcast and see where it goes. So I woke up at 4 a.m. and just said, you know what, fuck it. I'll just surrender and just see where it goes. What's the worst thing that happens? I got corporate money. I would have spent, 5 to 10 grand on was 10 grand on a learning how to podcast thing. But at least I have a podcast, and if I don't use it, I don't use it. But I took a thing. And the podcast, when they decide, like, he was coaching me, he was like, who are you creating it for? And I was just like, I'm creating it for me, man. Like, I'm inspired to evolve. And like, I don't know, like, I'm like the artist looking for himself in the paintbrush. Like, there's got to be another way to this. So it was the corporate 9-to-5er, 6 to 6er, 6 days a week.
How many years ago was this?
This was 3.5 years ago.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And it got to the point where I was just like, I'm going to just interview people that are living life on their own terms, similar to yourself, brother, right? You've carved your own path. This is why I had you on the Inspired Evolution podcast. People are living life on their own terms, interviewing them. What are their ideas? What are their philosophies? How did they do it? And then share that back with people on the Inspired Evolution, hoping, this is how an engineer thinks, that I'll listen to everybody's blueprints. And then, just like China does with German engineered machines, like just make a Chinese version of a German machine, right? And I'll get pretty good. Like, I'll get a pretty good product, right? So that's what I was thinking. I was like, de-engineer everybody's like amazing stories, re-engineer them into my life, and try and find a way that, these people have done. Because that was one of the things, like, people that inspired me were speakers and coaches and podcasters. But my job was not inspiring me, but somehow I thought that these inspiring people I would be like one day. But I wasn't doing anything in my day-to-day that looked anything like what these guys were doing, right? Which, like, right now when I say that to you sounds so obvious, but that just wasn't there.
It's so important you're sharing that, and I think it's always a good reminder for me, because I think there's this trait where I've certainly had this, where for whatever reason, if it's a friend telling me this, I could be like, dude, I could tell them that. But when it's my own shit, I can get caught up in exactly what you just said, of like not realizing that discrepancy. Okay, I had to just say that, but keep going.
And so as of that point, like, I just realized that there's this discrepancy, and there was this moment of courage where I realized, man, I'm going to have to find some courage, because my biggest fear was, what does life look like without my day-to-day paycheck? And actually, just to honor the story, like, it was really intense when I realized what courage was, because I actually thought courage and fearlessness were the same things. Can you imagine being like 28 and not realizing the difference between courage and fearlessness? Like, I always thought they were the same thing. And then I was literally eating an acai bowl on a construction site. Most people would have noticed something right there. Everybody else is eating hot dogs and sausage rolls and sandwiches and pastrami sandwiches and shit. I'm sitting here on a construction site, steel cap boots, hard hat, eating an acai bowl with berries. Pick the odd one out. But anyway, people can always see you better than you see you, I think, sometimes. And so I'm sitting there, and I just divine intervention, pulled out my phone, Googled the word courage. And I'm looking at it, and it goes, courage is not having fear. Courage is totally having fear and moving towards it. And I just fucking went, what? Holy shit, courage is something you work on. It's something you cultivate. Fearlessness is something you have. It may be inherent as a trait. But courage, I need fear to have courage. And the very next thought that came tumbling down the waterfall in my mind was, my biggest fear is not having a paycheck. Life outside of this picketed fence that I'd been setting up for myself, get a good job, get a good degree, have a good family, retire, all that sort of stuff, right? What happens outside of this lane? What goes on out here, right? It was my biggest fear. And I realized in that moment that in order to be courageous, I'm going to have to leave. And so then I made the decision to leave, and it took me a while to integrate all of that. Again, the decision, the realization, and it took me 6 months to a year to integrate all of that, to actually just pull the pin and move on. And that was prior to me even deciding that I was going to do a podcast. Then the podcast came through, and I just followed the signs, and the podcast happens. So in there, now with the Inspired Evolution, I've come full circle, and in its truest form, I believe in vitality. So now when I've been talking probably for about an hour now, but I literally, for me, feels like 7 minutes, if I'm honest with you guys. Like, I'm in a flow state. Yeah. And Jake gets it too when he's talking. Like, conversation is where I drop into flow. And how dare I not design my life around where I drop into flow? I don't even think flow is coincidental. I can talk about that with Eckhart Tolle and Stephen Kotler, our mutual friends. But in there, like, now it's like, I want to build my life around the things that matter to me the most, which is conscious conversation, right? And that looks like podcasting, coaching, and speaking. And how dare I not do that, right? And honestly, that is like a spiritual perspective. And it's like, oh yeah, congratulations, Amrit, like, touch wood, well done. Like, you went and did something you really love. Honestly, you've got a moral fucking obligation to do it, right? Because and this is not coming from a place of arrogance, but this is my truth. I'm going to be a better speaker than those people that are trying to be speakers when they're like, it's not their calling.
Mm-hmm.
It just is, like, because I'm just going to show up for it more because I fucking love it. Like, I'm podcasting every week. I've done so for 3.5 years. I'm sharing ideas, connecting with people all the time, right? Now, if you feel like podcasting's a good idea and it's good for your business versus someone like me that just loves to talk, I'm sorry, it's just not going to stack up. And I'm not saying that I'm amazing. It's just I found the thing that I love. Please go find the thing that you love, because you're going to smoke aces in that space. And that's what we need. More and more people to wake the fuck up and do exactly what you love doing. Because in that space, when you're killing it, as you know, having mastery is a trigger for a flow state, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then from there, it's like, boom, like, I rock at this. Let me go. Let me have some fun. And you just show up, vitality, brimming with enthusiasm, ready to do, ready to go. Your mental headspace, when you're doing the thing that you're meant to be doing, your purpose, is just invincible. And that's the cornerstone of your health. That is your health, your headspace from that place, and your purpose. They're one and the same. If you're ever finding yourself unhealthy, question your purpose. What are you doing? Maybe you're not in alignment, right? And if you're feeling like you're off purpose, come home, look after your mental health. Go see the psychologist, go see your therapist, chat to a coach, get realigned again. Health and purpose are the same thing. I'll just finish by saying, I thought that was me just carrying that message. And I thought, I had to wear this all by myself. But then being on this path for this long, in the whole science of Ayurveda, which is like an ancient Indian science, right? At the whole heart of Ayurveda is your dharma. Health is Ayurveda. The science of health is there to facilitate your journey of life, which is your dharma. And that's your dharma, which is your purpose. It's an ancient conversation, right? It's always been there. Your health and your purpose are the same.
You said so much there. My mind's like totally whirling about 10 different things. How dare you drop so many wisdom bombs? But okay, so first, one of the things I love that you said there, and I think the flips, so there's two sides to this. One, what you were saying about when you're doing the thing that you love, it fuels you so much. And I can also speak to the other end of when you're in conflict with what's true for you, feeling that resistance. And obviously there's healthy stress, there's healthy resistance, but there's also the unhealthy,
debilitating,
and the unhealthy had, for me, manifested in what I would call Lyme disease. So I think what you're saying is so true on so many levels. And, from A, avoiding health, but to B, like what you were saying, is maximizing your life, living to that fullest potential, which I absolutely love. Another thing that you said that got me thinking, and you shared this offline with me, which I love so, so much. And this, I think, resonates with anyone who's kind of in the first parts of their journey. You're like, and everyone here has got to check out Amrit's channel, Inspired Evolution on YouTube. I mean, dude, you've connected with some of the most baddest people in the world. Dave Asprey, Marissa Peer. You just interviewed the author of the Body Keeps Score. Like, you're connecting with the dopest people. And
touch wood.
What you told me, I'm like, and it's like the most cliched shit, right? And this is what I love about you too. It's like you say things, you articulate in such a masterful way where it feels like sometimes abstract and esoteric, but it clicks. But you're also just fucking practical. You're like, here's the fucking reality of it. You're like, dude, I just didn't give up. Like you talked about, it's been 3.5 years. There's the caliber of people you get to talk to is inspiring. And you just told me, yeah, I didn't give up. And I think that not giving up, and I've thought a lot about this, doesn't come from a place of finding the right tactic or strategy. It's when you love something enough, you're going to keep doing it because you love doing it. And then just by nature of keeping going it, you're going to find the path towards the quote unquote success, but it doesn't even fucking matter because you're already, the journey is the destination.
Totally right. The process, you love it. Yes, bro.
And you're just like the lighting example. Fuck, man, I could ask you so many more questions, but I want to be conscious of time.
Damn it, touch wood.
Okay, but first, where can people connect with you online if they want to dive into more of what you're bringing out to the world?
Absolutely. So YouTube is the safest space because I'm not selling you anything on YouTube. So just rock up, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I'm there launching episodes every week. Actually, Jake's episode's coming out soon as well. And that was an awesome episode, bro. You were so graceful to interview as well. So thank you for that. And yeah, these are the kind of conversations we're having on the weekly, on the regular. Literally, the latest conversation that's coming out close to this is limiting beliefs and how to move through them. So, this is the kind of stuff we're working on all the time, where the inner world meets the outer world, and how best to navigate, just the life. If I had a punchline, it's literally live the life you love, is kind of the cliche one that we've got, but what's in my heart is just enthusiasm for life. So that's what's going on in Inspired Evolution on YouTube. And leave us comments and stuff, because that's me writing back to you in the comment section. There's also a really beautiful Facebook community called Inspired Evolution Community.
It's huge, man. You've got like a
Yeah.
huge community there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people there. Dude, just the amount of energetic support that people give each other in that space. I'm done. I just like, man, this is just, just someone would like share something like, I'm feeling tender or vulnerable around this, and everyone will be like, yeah, man, I've got that. Or things I don't even know about. Like sometimes like someone will say things like Mercury's in retrograde, just hang out for like 2 weeks. I don't even know what that means. Want to direct message me, Facebook, just hit me up on Facebook. I'm there. I respond to my Facebook messages. It does take me a while. There's a lot of inbound mail, but I generally do get back to everybody. It's slowly tipping into a place where I almost can't do it just yet, but yeah, I'm still able to get back to pretty much everybody that direct messages me. So that's probably the best places to get in touch with me.
Wow. Yeah. And I highly recommend the YouTube. Like I like to watch the interviews too, but
me too.
Or listening to your podcast. You bring on some incredible guests, and you have a way to hold space that brings out the best in these incredible people you interview. Man, I could ask you so many things, but especially talking with you too, like there's a lot, in the world, and the people listening to the show, right? They're into mindfulness, they're into meditation, they're into a lot of the things that we both share common values. However, I will say that I could just tell it's embodied with you. Like you don't just talk about these things, you live it. And I've been meditating since I was 18. So for about 6 years, I've never experienced, any profound, crazy experiences. And I guess what I want to ask you is, what has meditation, this is kind of a three questions in one, so take it any way you wish. What has meditation brought you? Why do you recommend it to people? And what expectations should people have, but also not have, that might be hindering them continuing with it or even starting in the first place?
Cool. So one was what meditation has brought me. The third one was expectations. What was the second question?
Oh, what was the second one?
Okay, cool. I'll answer those two.
Yeah, but start with those two.
I'll answer those
we'll
two.
Come back.
Cool. So what meditation has brought me is probably most clear in what meditation hasn't brought me. Yeah. It hasn't brought back my depression. Yeah. So if you knew where I was and where I am now, like, yeah, people look at Amrit and they're like, dude, like touch wood. And I say this with like grace. People are like, dude, your laugh makes me laugh. And I'm just like, dude, like, do you know, like, you have no idea how much that actually means to me when you say that to me, right? Because literally 7 years ago, I was depressed as fuck. And now you're saying this of the same person, right? And so when you say like, what does meditation bring you? And I do often think, and that probably bleeds into the expectations piece, is like, we're looking for nirvana or we're looking for samadhi, right? We're looking for these connection points. And yes, they do come around, not super frequently. And I'll talk the expectations pieces in a moment. But the thing that it has done for me is I know that I've got a practice where daily I'm connecting to the present moment. Yeah. And from there, I'm connecting to something bigger than me that I believe in, right? Which is not necessarily outside of me, it's within me actually. Yeah. But I'm connecting and talking about lost connections and depression. There's no depression, touch wood. Yeah. It just isn't. And again, depression is not something you shed and you try on for size. It's just that I'm not slipping back into the past. Yeah. Like I'm anchored here most of the time, thanks to a practice of meditation. Right. So what has it gotten me? Well, not a lot other than I'm just here with you now. Yeah. and a whole bunch of insights about myself that I can share with you with such grace, right? Which is like, by the way, this is my value system. This is where I was out. Why? Because I took time to introspect and sit, right, on the back of a meditation to think time and time again and sort of unpack my stuff. So the fact that it kept my depression at bay and my anxiety at bay, right? And I'm here and spend most of the time in my presence, right? So that's really huge, really, really huge, really, really huge for me. So that's kind of what it has brought. And I know it's not sexy. I get it. I really get that it's not sexy. Yeah,
well,
which
thank
is
you for that reminder. I think
yeah.
it's for me too. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't sexy. Sometimes it's doesn't feel like anything's happening, but to your point, it's what's not happening.
Right. It's because and maybe your challenges in life haven't been as big as mine. I'm not wishing them upon you. I'm not wishing bigger challenges into my world either, touch wood. But having been through like a certain amount of challenges, it means that much to me to just be in a really good space. So the other thing about expectations as well is one of the things I noticed early on was I would only get this, this yummy sadhana connection, samadhi, like nirvana kind of feeling. It wasn't that I wouldn't get it. I probably only get it like 1 in 4 meditations. Yeah. I'm not sure if you can relate.
Man.
Yeah. So like
I'd sort of,
yeah. So I sort of sit down and there's just one meditation where you're just smiling. Like you're just like, this feels good. Like right now, and I had one yesterday actually. Today wasn't like it. And I was like, damn it, I lost it again. Right. But yesterday I had a meditation. I was just sitting there and like the 20 minutes went by and I was like, oh fuck, nah, like another 20. And so I just sat there, and my practice recently has been an hour and I've been learning to cut it back to 20 because I've been breathing and working with it for quite some time now. So it's always, I'm in different phases with it to keep it exciting, right? To keep it moving, to keep it shifting. So what I learned, and this is how the engineer thought, was it's not about, it only works 1 in 4 times for me. It was like, let me just cram in the other 3 times quicker so I can get to that 4th time sooner, and that was just like me just playing the odds with the casino of God, whatever you want to call it, of meditation. I was like, I'll just sit more frequently to get that meditation more frequently. In terms of expectations, it's a tough one because if you didn't have expectations, you wouldn't bring yourself to meditate, right? Like you have expectations. It's the same thing with like when you go away on a meditation retreat or anything, you're going away with an expectation to become something, to experience something. And oftentimes when you go on away to a meditation retreat, it's like, I definitely didn't get what I was looking for, but I found myself. Like I was more comfortable just being me. And that's really what I needed. And that happens every single time I go on a meditation retreat. It's like I'll carry an intention and be like, okay, this time, like I'm calling in more abundance for my family. We're setting up a family. We're going to get a new home. Abundance. I'm going to go meditate and pray for abundance. And I get there and it's just like, bro, take a look at your life. You've got a beautiful wife. You've got a beautiful home. You are abundant. Shut the fuck up. It's like, oh shit. Yeah. All right. My bad. My bad. Connect to the abundance that's already here and more abundance will come. Got it. Oh, so just be. And, it always brings me back to that. So even I struggle with expectations, right? But it always circles back to, what just being, really just coming back to what is and what's being. And it's really hard because you're using your mind to get you places in meditation, right? To get you to your meditation cushion, right? So using your mind to get you to your meditation cushion. Mind doesn't really want to go there unless there's an expectation of what's going to happen. When you get there, it's all good stuff, but none of your expectations are going to be met, right? So knowing that about your mind, but then also remembering that that's just one dimension of the 4 or the 5, yeah, depending on how you want to look at it. Mind, body, spirit, yeah, and heart. Yeah, meditation, great for your heart, great for your spirit, great for your body, your nervous system, dropping back in. So the other 3 dimensions, love it. Yeah. And just the stillness, the silence, what comes from that, your ability to observe, your ability to listen. So in that, those things are nourished. So however you want to convince your mind, it's like, you know what, 20 minutes, let me sit. Now, one of the things early on, and this question is potentially for those that are tuning into meditation for the first time. So if you can sit for 20 minutes, let me ask you, just like in the background, how long can you sit for comfortably? And your answer, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And my response to you is, great. Your meditation time is half of that. Right? So if you can sit comfortably for 20, meditate for 10. If you can sit comfortably for 10, meditate for 5. Don't make it a slog. Don't make it arduous. Sit for 5 and get to the point where it's like, shit, I could have sat for longer. Stephen Kotler talks about this in his book, Stealing Fire. The most important run, like the most important part of a run down a ski slope when you're doing it, is not the beginning, it's not the middle, it's the end. How you end and how you finish is most important, because that's what's firing in your neurology when you get off the yoga cushion. If you get off the yoga cushion every time and you set the timer for 10 minutes, and at 10 minutes, your mind's like, I'm so fucking distracted. This was so painful. What the fuck? I don't want to do this ever again. That's the association you're building with meditation. But if you leave in 5 minutes and you're like, oh man, I was just getting into it, you're going to want to come back every day for 5 minutes just to get into it. And then maybe you bleed it into 7 minutes, right? It's about the end and making it really yummy. So halve your time for meditation and you show up more consistently, and it'll be more of an enjoyable experience for those that are tuning in for the first time to meditation.
That is so good. And it's so funny you said that, because literally yesterday I read the part in Stephen Kotler's book, The Art of the Impossible, where he talks about like it's scientifically proven. When you stop, when you have that momentum still and that excitement, you're much more inclined to pick it up the next day.
It's so annoying though, because you don't want to. You don't want to, do you?
Exactly. But as opposed to, I've definitely done the opposite more where I'm burning myself out trying to get further, and then I'm less inclined to get back to it. So thank you for that reminder. Bro, I could talk to you literally all day. I mean, I had like wrote down all these questions, but didn't even get into. So we'll definitely have to do a round 2 at some point. But just want to say thank you, man, for real. It's been we had the honor of connecting through a Stephen Kotler group podcast, and your energy lit up immediately on the call. Dove into your work. Had the honor of being the flip script last week on your show, and man, what an honor to connect with you, to dive into your story. And I'm so excited to continue following your journey and seeing what you create. So thank you for the time, the energy, the laughter, and the amazing stories, bro.
Oh, brother Bear, thank you so much. The honor is completely mine. I shared this to you when you came onto my show. It's just your presence and your frequency, the space you hold, really means so much to me. Like, just the health and purpose conversation is, your TED Talk, anxiety, like how to heal that with purpose is literally, my story is depression and healing that with purpose, and just to feel that there's a brother out there that is literally like rolled up his sleeves and doing the same work, and, trying to have an impact on the world to just make it a better place. So people don't have to go through the challenges we did. Man, like, yeah, really, your presence opens my heart. So thank you so much for the work you do, bro. It's a real honor to have been here and shared myself, and I look forward to doing it again.
Amen. Thank you, bro.